Hello, gorgeous. Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Heather and as always, I'm reading with a vengeance. And as always, I hope you are as well. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. And if you're new to my channel, a very warm welcome to you. I hope everybody is doing very, very well. How is everybody's reading doing? Today I am doing a book tag. This is the book cover telephone tag. I was tagged by the lovely Nikki over at Red Dot Reads. Hi Nikki, and thank you so much for tagging me. The original tag came from Elizabeth over at Reading Riley. I love her channel. I love both channels that I just mentioned. I will link both of their tag videos down below. Kind of serves two purposes, that you can watch those videos, but then you can also be directed to their channels. So the idea behind this tag is kind of like that old children's game of telephone, where you have a line of people and you start off with an original, either it's a word or more likely it was a story or just a sentence that the first person would come up with, and they would whisper it into the next person's ear, and then that person would hear it, hear their version of it, and they'd whisper it into the next person, and so on and so on. And by the end, the last person in line, they will say out loud what it was that was shared at the beginning, and inevitably it's just completely different from what was started with. But each step of the way, there is some similarities. With the book cover telephone tag, we're starting off with the cover and we are taking some element of that cover, whether it be the title or the photo on the front or the artwork on the front or the font of the title or a word in that title, and you're taking one of those elements or even the theme of the book or the genre of the book, whatever floats your boat, and you are taking another book cover that kind of matches that detail. So to start this tag, I am taking the last book that Nikki talked about, and that's going to be my starting point for the books that I'm going to talk about. The fun thing about this book, and what I was really excited about this book tag, is I decided to take books that I haven't talked about yet and aren't necessarily on my shelf. I think the original idea was to do books that are on your shelf so you can kind of physically go through and like, oh, this is like this one, and that just didn't work out for me. I don't have enough books in my library to do that, but I did stick with books that are on my like Goodreads TBR that I haven't talked about yet. So I'm super excited about these 10 books that I'm going to talk about. So let's get started. So the last book that Nikki talked about is Blue Moon by Lee Child. This is the 24th book in the Jack Reacher series. I have read, I believe, the first two in the Jack Reacher series. I really enjoy them, and I will eventually get through all of them. But since I've only read two and I like to read them in order, I obviously have not gotten to this one yet, but eventually I will get to it. And since it is the 24th in the series, I won't talk too much about the synopsis, but I think most people know who Jack Reacher is, who is an ex-military policeman, and he's kind of a drifter, and anywhere he ends up helping somebody out of a pretty big bind. They're pretty entertaining. Movie was okay. Tom Cruise is definitely not Jack Reacher. The guy they got to play Jack Reacher in the TV series, absolutely Jack Reacher. If you haven't watched the miniseries, it's really good. Anyways, as you can see from this cover, it's got kind of blue tones and it's got a man standing by himself in the woods. The book that I found on my TBR that I will eventually get to is The Silent Wife by KARIN Slaughter. I'm a big KARIN Slaughter fan. The Silent Wife is also another theme that kind of matches Blue Moon in that it is part of a series. It is number 10 in the Will Trent series. So I think I've only read the first two. Gosh, that's a theme. In the Will Trent series, but I will eventually get to this. But as you can see, it's a lone woman running in the woods. While it doesn't have the blue tones, there's definitely kind of a similar theme going on with the artwork. And basically the Will Trent series, Will Trent works for the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, and it follows him, their police procedurals. The one thing I will say about Karin Slaughter's police procedurals is that she gets quite graphic with the violence. That's not your thing. I would be wary about that, but she is a phenomenal writer. I absolutely love Karin Slaughter. And if you're up for a really, really solid thriller police procedural, then the Will Trent series is a good one. So taking kind of the theme of the lone woman on the cover and kind of a creepy vibe, I went from this book to Anna Dressed in Blood by Kendare Blake. So an entirely different genre. So we went from police procedural to, I believe, a horror novel. And I've been excited about this one for a while, and I don't know why I haven't gotten to it yet. Could it be the 500 other books that are on my TBR? Who knows? It's a mystery. As you can see, this one has the lone woman on the cover kind of floating there. I'm gonna just read briefly the synopsis on Goodreads, just because it's been a while since I put it on my TBR. I think it'll be better suited to read you the synopsis than come up with it from the top of my head. So, Anna Dressed in Blood, Kaz Lowood has inherited an unusual vocation. He kills the dead. So did his father before him, until he was gruesomely murdered by a ghost he sought to kill. Now, armed with his father's mysterious and deadly, I don't know that word, Kaz travels the country with his kitchen witch mother and their spirit-sniffing cat. They follow legends and local lore, destroy the murderous dead, and keep pesky things like the future and friends at bay. Searching for a ghost the locals call Anna Dressed in Blood, Kaz expects the usual: track, hunt, kill. What he finds instead is a girl entangled in curses and rage, a ghost like he's never faced before. She still wears the dress she wore on the day of her brutal murder in 1958. Once white, now stained red and dripping with blood. Since her death, Anna has killed any and every person who has dared to step into the deserted Victorian she used to call home, yet she spares Kaz's life. Sounds amazing. So from the cover of Anna Dressed in Blood, where you have this soul woman on the cover, but she's kind of floating, I took that visual and kind of used it to transition to the next book's title, and that is The Floating Girls by Lo Patrick. This is marketed as a contemporary fiction / mystery. I have not read this author before. I can't even remember how I came across this book. So this is a stunning Southern fiction, a wonderfully atmospheric coming-of-age family drama. So that's 2 tick marks for me. Geographically Southern and coming of age. Drama told from the perspective of a feisty 12-year-old girl, tick mark number 3, reminiscent of a modern-day Scout Finch, hello, as she unravels the secrets that threaten her entire family. Kay thought she knew everything there was to know about her family and their marsh life, but that was before the new neighbors arrived and her parents became suspects in a murder and a kidnapping. One hot, sticky summer in Bledsoe, Georgia, 12-year-old Kay Whitaker stumbles across a stilt house in a neighboring marsh, and upon Andy Weber, a boy about her age. He and his father have recently moved back to Georgia from California, and rumors of the suspicious drowning death of Andy's mother years earlier have chased them there and back. Kay is fascinated and enamored with Andy, and she doesn't listen when her father tells her to stay away from the Webers. But when Kay's sister goes missing, the mystery of Mrs. Weber's death and Kay's parents' potential role in it comes to light. Kay and her brothers must navigate the layers of secrets that emerge in the course of the investigation as their family and the world as they know it unravels around them. Sounds amazing. Coming of age in the South, mystery. I absolutely need to move this up my TBR ladder. So from The Floating Girls, where we have water on the cover, I moved to Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. This book was talked a lot about on Booktube and Bookstagram, I think a few years ago. I think a lot of people were disappointed by this book because it followed her super successful novel, The Girl on the Train, which is a shame. I'm still really interested in reading it because I really enjoyed The Girl on the Train and I really loved the writing and the way it was structured. So I am still, despite the many bad reviews this book has gotten, I am excited to read it. Anyways, water on the cover is why I picked this one. Really quick synopsis. A single mother turns up dead at the bottom of the river that runs through town. Earlier in the summer, a vulnerable A vulnerable teenage girl met the same fate. They are not the first women lost to these dark waters, but their deaths disturbed the river and its history, dredging up secrets long submerged. Left behind is a lonely 15-year-old girl. Parentless and friendless, she now finds herself in the care of her mother's sister, a fearful stranger who has been dragged back to the place she deliberately ran from, a place to which she vowed she'd never return. With the same propulsive writing and acute understanding of human instincts that captivated millions of readers around the world, blah, blah, blah. It says it's an urgent, twisting, deeply satisfying read that hinges on the deceptiveness of emotion and memory, as well as the devastating ways that the past can reach a long arm into the present. So yeah, I'll eventually get to this one. So I had a hard time transitioning from Into the Water into the next book. So I kind of took some creative liberties here. And the one exception in this list is this next book I actually have read, but I'm happy to share with you. So I took the wobbly letters of Into the Water, and I took that into the next book of Crooked Letter, Crooked Letter. So this is by Tom Franklin, and I gave this book 4 stars. I read it, when did I read it? I read it more than 10 years ago. It looks like I read it in June of 2011. This is an atmospheric drama set in rural Mississippi. In the late 1970s, Larry Ott and Silas 32 Jones were boyhood pals. Their worlds were as different as night and day. Larry, the child of lower middle-class white parents, and Silas, the son of a poor single black mother. Yet for a few months, the boys stepped outside of their circumstances and shared a special bond. But then tragedy struck. Larry took a girl on a date to a drive-in movie, and she was never heard from again. She was never found, and Larry never confessed, but all eyes rested on him as the culprit. The incident shook the county, and perhaps Silas most of all. His friendship with Larry was broken, and then Silas left town. More than 20 years have passed. Larry, a mechanic, lives a solitary existence, never able to rise above the whispers of suspicion. Silas has returned as a constable. He and Larry have no reason to cross paths until another girl disappears and Larry is blamed again. And now the two men who once called each other friend are forced to confront the past they've buried and ignored for decades. I loved this book. And it's probably during a time where I was super, super critical as far as my star ratings on Goodreads. I have a feeling if I had read this book now, I would have given it 5 stars. But I did give it 4 stars. I would highly recommend this book, and I'm glad I took this opportunity to tell you about it because I'm not sure when I would talk about it. So here you go, Crooked Letter by Tom Franklin. So I took you can't really see because it's kind of tiny on the cover, but there are 2 people running on the cover. And I took the running into the next title, and that is Running with Sherman by Christopher McDougall. And this is a nonfiction book, and it is about an animal, and I love nonfiction books where it talks about the relationship between humans and animals. It's kind of one of my favorite topics. So this involves the author, Chris McDougall. He agreed to take in a donkey from an animal hoarder. He thought it would be no harder than the rest of the adjustments he and his family had made after moving from Philadelphia to the heart of Pennsylvania, Amish country. But when he arrived, Sherman was in such bad shape he could barely move, and his hair was coming out in clumps. Chris decided to undertake a radical rehabilitation program designed not only to heal Sherman's body, but to heal his mind as well. It turns out the best way to soothe a donkey is to give it a job, and so Chris decided to teach Sherman how to run. He'd heard about burro racing, a unique type of race where humans and donkeys run together in a callback to mining days, and decided he and Sherman would enter the World Championship in Colorado. So this will probably be one of those books where I'm gonna need to be in the mind space, because I have a feeling I'll shed a tear or 2 for this one. But I do love the stories of, humans interacting with animals in a positive way. So I am looking forward to this one. So this was kind of a no-brainer. I took the fact that there was an animal on the cover of Running with Sherman, and I went to this next book, Tales from the Inner City by Sean Tan. And of course, as you can see, it has an animal/fish on the cover. Looks like this is a collection of short stories told in the form of graphic media. It looks like it's a collection of incredibly original stories, rich with feelings, strangely moving, almost numinous. What does numinous mean? Having a strong religious or spiritual quality, indicating or suggesting the presence of a divinity. Okay. And when the reader comes to the artwork, it's like walking into an amazing room and then throwing open a curtain to see a brilliant scene that makes you understand and appreciate everything you've encountered in a deeper way. I'm trying to remember, I feel like I came across this book at the library and the cover made me pick it up because it is a beautiful cover and a quite intriguing one at that. Is that a sunfish? Anyways, that should be interesting. So to take this cover and the cover of the next book I'm going to talk about and put it side to side, would you see any kind of relationship? Probably not. But what I did was I took the artfulness and the colorfulness of Tales from the Inner City and I translated into Commonwealth by Ann Patchett. I've talked about Ann Patchett a couple of times. She is quickly become, well, not quickly because it's been over many, many years that I've read multiple books by her, but she is becoming a favorite author of mine. Commonwealth will likely be the next book that I read by her. I haven't seen Commonwealth talked about a whole lot on Booktube. And actually, I really haven't seen Ann Patchett talked a whole lot. I guess Dutch House was quite popular when it came out. And of course, her Bel Canto won the Women's Prize way back when. And I've read both of those, and I've read The Magician's Assistant, which is my favorite of hers. Absolutely love that. I think I will talk about that at some point. I might do an author spotlight. I don't know, I'm getting totally off topic. Commonwealth, let's see. One Sunday afternoon in Southern California, Bert Cousins shows up at Franny Keating's christening party uninvited. Before evening falls, he has kissed Franny's mother, Beverly, thus setting in motion the dissolution of their marriages and the joining of two families. Spanning 5 decades, Commonwealth explores how this chance encounter reverberates through the lives of the 4 parents and 6 children involved. Spending summers together in Virginia, and the Keating and Cousins children forge a lasting bond that is based on a shared disillusionment with their parents and the strange and genuine affection that grows up between them. That sounds fascinating. It sounds it's a very similar theme, I think, among her books, and that is just the ties that bind family members. And I've just found it fascinating, and I love the way she writes. So I'm hoping to get to this one soon. So what I took from Commonwealth, I took the food that's on the cover and I translated into After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid, a Booktube darling, as we all know. This is one of the few books that I haven't read yet. I plan on reading all of Reid's books. I've read the really popular ones, the favorites, the Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones, and there's another one. And a couple of other ones, but I haven't read this one yet. And so I will be getting to it eventually. She wrote this one before her more popular ones, so it's not as popular, but it is highly rated on Goodreads. So After I Do, of course, has the burnt toast on it, which is why I picked it. It's the food link between the covers. When Lauren and Ryan's marriage reaches the breaking point, they come up with an unconventional plan. They decide to take a year off in the hopes of finding a way to fall in love again. 1 year apart and only one rule: they cannot contact each other. Aside from that, anything goes. Yikes, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. Lauren embarks on a journey of self-discovery, quickly finding that her friends and family have their own ideas about the meaning of marriage. These influences, as well as her own healing process and the challenges of living apart from Ryan, begin to change Lauren's ideas about monogamy and marriage. She starts to question, when you can have romance without loyalty and commitment without marriage, when love and lust are no longer tied together, what do you value? What are you willing to fight for? That sounds like an interesting experiment. Would you do something like that in your relationship? I'd have to say there would have to be, for me, one other specific rule that would need to be put in place before this kind of experiment. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid's stuff, and I will read all of her books at one point. This one will likely come sooner rather than later. So what I took from this cover, the burnt toast on a plate, I took that as just something kind of an everyday item that would seemingly not have any meaning or would mean something other than what you would view it as. And I took that to this next cover, and that is The October Boys by Adam Millard. So you have here an ice cream truck, but you have clearly a horror novel. So this ice cream truck, which normally is an innocent kind of everyday thing that you might see that you have certain ideas about, but clearly it means something entirely else. So I'm super excited about this book for a number of reasons. I'm excited that it's on this list because this will be the first book that somebody else, if they decide to do this tag, it's going to be the book that they start with. So I'm excited about that. I'm also excited because when I heard about this book, I heard about this book from Diane over at Green-Eyed Monster Reviews. She's a relatively new channel and I'm really enjoying her stuff. Go and check her out. But she is the one who talked about this book because she talks a lot about horror books. And I was really surprised that I hadn't heard of it yet and that it wasn't on my TBR yet. And I'm super excited about it because it ticks a bunch of boxes of tropes that I absolutely love. And let me share those with you right now. So per Goodreads, we have Halloween 1988, a gang of 12-year-old boys, hello, are trick-or-treating in London. Off in the distance, they hear the discordant chimes of an ice cream truck. It seems strange to hear on a cold autumnal night, but their thoughts of maximizing their candy haul soon dismissed its incongruous melody until they saw the rusting hulk idling in the shadows at the end of the street, its driver a faceless shadow. That was the night he took one of them. Then you have October 2016. Years later, Halloween is fast approaching and Tom Craven is still haunted by the events of that dark night, especially the fact that their friend was never found. Increasingly plagued by horrific visions, Tom returns to the place where it all began, only to discover he's not the only one who can feel it. His friends have already arrived and are preparing for a battle which could get them all killed. The ice cream man is back and he's come for the ones that got away. I can't wait for this book. This has so many vibes of Summer of Night by Dan Simmons that I absolutely loved. It has preteen boys, a group of friends. It took place in the 60s. It was in the South and they're solving this mystery together and just fantastic. And when I read the synopsis for this book, I was super excited to read something else along those lines because Summer of Night is one of my all-time favorite books. I know I've talked about it in a previous video. So that's it. That's the end of the book cover telephone tag. I hope you enjoyed finding out about these books that I haven't talked about yet. I really had a good time talking about them. Have you read any of these books? I would love to hear your thoughts. Should I move some of them up a little bit higher on my TBR list? What do you think? Please comment down in the doodly-doo. Thank you again to Nikki for tagging me, and I will tag the following folks. I will tag Char over at Thoroughly Enjoyed Books. I would love to hear your answers on these questions. I tag Kelly over at Cozy Reader Kelly. I have just discovered her channel and I'm really, really enjoying it. And I will also tag another new to me booktuber, and that is Aoife over at Pretty Purple Polka Dots. I'm really enjoying her channel. As usual, there's no pressure to do this tag, but I would really love to hear your answers to these, Char, Aoife, and Kelly. If you're still watching at this point, please consider giving that like button a boop, and a subscribe would be wonderful. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.